Okay, good afternoon. My talk today is about, well, one of the elements that Bradley was just showing in his circle that, makes the full project or describes the full complexity of a project of installing a hydrogen production or green hydrogen production even. One important part is the securing sustainable power for this green future. Why is this such a big issue? Of our operating costs in the future of an electrolyzer, we have around about 70% are represented by electricity. Water, maintenance, labor costs play a much lower role than electricity. So it is a big deal to talk about. So yeah, my name is Yves Reuter, I'm from Enavos. Enavos is one of the electricity suppliers from Luxembourg. But at the same time, we also own renewable generation capacities. We see our, mainly participation in 10 wind parks, mainly owned by us, the photovoltaic parks and also the hydro assets. And as a new asset class, we also will introduce with this project the green hydrogen production. Yes. And green hydrogen production is, here it is part of the LuxHyVal project that Professor Bradley Ladewig has already mentioned. Now to get a little bit more concrete, it is Enavos who will invest into it and own it and operate it later on with all the elements described here. Or at least from, let's say, the production elements, from the electronic components, the electrolyzers, compressors, storage, or the rolling material, the trailers that bring the hydrogen to our industrial customers. So all of it that you could already see in the nice synergy circle before. Now, if we look at the lower right end, the renewable energy source, well, we are in a situation where on the side of our hydrogen production, we do not have the possibility to install any wind power, solar power, or so on, due to the limitation of the size of the plot. So we always will have to rely on electricity that is fed via the grid. Our projected yearly hydrogen production is 650 tons, which will require around about 36 gigawatt hours of electricity, which would be an equivalent for 9,000 households. So it's quite a considerable amount, and unfortunately, we have this regulation point that was on top of on your circle, and I will come now to that because it's not so easy just to tap the grid and take out the electricity. We have to respect a few things when doing this. So there is mainly two ways or two routes that are considered in the European legislation. For us, LuxHyVal, only the lower one applies. So we do, as I said, we do not have on-site renewable resources. That means we have to procure from off-site via off-site PPAs. PPA is a power purchase agreement where we are directly contracting a PV, a solar, a PV or a wind farm to provide us the electricity that we will then have to take off completely. But not enough with that. We have on the next slide a few more rules to comply with by doing it by transporting this electricity via the grid. It could be easy. You just look at the end of the year, produced as much and we consumed as much and everything is fine. No, that's not how it's going to happen. First of all, for electrolyzers that come into operation after 28, new renewable energy resources have to be tapped. So it's not to take away existing plants. So if you want to produce in the future green hydrogen, you also have to build your own renewable assets, or at least to rely on new assets. Then we will have a very strict time correlation starting 2030. So every hour we are allowed only to consume as much energy as the wind farm or the wind energy producer has produced in the same hour somewhere else. So with this come a few technical challenges that I will point out later on. And geographical proximity is another criterion from the European Union. We have to procure the electricity from the same bidding zone. Luxembourg particularly is now in the Luxembourgish German bidding zone. So at the moment we are free to tap on renewable assets in whole Germany and Luxembourg. And yes, then we come to the next slide. Now we look why this is a challenge. So this time correlation where we have to consume what is available, and we cannot make an average over the months or over the year. Here is a sample of over 500 hours, so to 20 days. What was available sometime last year, I think sometime in March, but doesn't matter. It's just to represent to you, to show you our operating challenge. Wind is the light blue. It was available partially, then there was during the days, there is additional PV, and if we combine this, red would be our electrolyzer set point. So you see it fluctuating wildly from 100%, from 1 to 0, and up again and down again, and all over these 20 days, we would have already had, I didn't count them, 5 to 6 shutdowns because of non-availability of electricity, just because the renewables are unfortunately not a constant energy source, and hence the electrolyzer will have to follow it. And this is a big technical challenge. So the intermittency of renewable energy, wind and solar, are not available all the time. It is for us as an operator, one big task will be to have a good forecasting, to know how we will operate tomorrow. We have to deliver to our customers tomorrow, the day after, even if there is no electricity. This is, and maybe make sure that there are alternative sources of green hydrogen. Of course, also the management of our local storage is part of this. And then the technical complexity, well, yeah, we need an electrolyzer that can follow this wild curve, I would say. Not all the technologies do really like this fluctuating operation. They especially alkaline, prefer to be operated much more stable. So one way to at least make up for this is to use PEM electrolyzer technology, and yes, that's the challenges we face. This brings me then to the conclusion. So the procurement of green electricity is kind of tricky. What are the best sources? Should we source from Luxembourg and from Germany, and which plant to choose to get ideally the most flat profile in combination of all our sources? Then the technology and the operations with the challenges I have, or the possible solutions I've shown to you right now. We need to get good technical solutions, to get good energy management systems to manage these points. And yes, as Professor Ladewig has said, hydrogen is one key piece of the decarbonization of our industry and partially also our transport operations. So we want to be part of it, and we want to contribute with our LuxHyVal to this challenge in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before continuing, I just wanted to say that we are a very small group, so feel free to intervene if you want to ask any question or comment something. It's fine because we can handle it being just a small group. But in any case, if you have any specific question related to this presentation for Eve, please, I ask you to do it right now because he has to go. So.
Oh, yeah. Yes, please.
One question about.
Should we? I will give you the microphone for the audience.
Sorry.
Thank you.
And just to know if you were with your nice project and developments, if you are in contact with International Energy Agency. If they know your projects, you are in touch with them. They are working a lot on hydrogen projects, I know, and that could be also a good point for you to be in touch with them.
As of today, we are not in touch with them. We are, I think, our consortium sticks together, and but at the moment, no. Maybe you have.
Yeah. So, wow, that's very sensitive. Thank you for the question. We don't have a direct connection to the IEA from our project, but we do have an international perspective to our project, which is through some partners in Australia. And these partners lead the actions within mission innovation for hydrogen valleys. And this is an international activity that has many, many stakeholders. So this particular project is very, very widely catalogued and reported. It's now a certified hydrogen valley with the list of hydrogen valleys maintained at the European level. Actually, it's a global list, but it's maintained at the European level. And so it's externally very, very visible. Having said that, the amount of details about the project that's available externally is quite limited at the moment, but the existence and the key parameters of what we aim to do is public and is very widely known. Yeah, thank you for the question. I've got another question for Eve. I wanted to ask about the variability and how that can be ameliorated either through electrical storage or through product storage. So you didn't mention anything on use of hydro facilities to bridge any of the gap, if that's allowed or if that's foreseen, or on-site electrical storage with batteries.
First of all, I didn't say if it is allowed or not, because the European regulations are not the only one that do apply. Our funding applications also do apply. So we still have outstanding funding to be given or not. And I have strong doubts that in the future we will be able to produce, let's say, in intermittent moments from the grid. But on the other hand, I would hope for. So this is still depending on what funds we will be granted. Battery energy storage is not too much in our consideration, as simply the cost for a battery at the moment we see it as too high to, especially we would require enormous amounts of batteries, and so if you imagine a 5 megawatt electrolyzer can empty a 5 megawatt hour battery, which is a full container in 1 hour. So there is basically, and this comes with a high price tag. So really for production, I do not see electric storage as a solution. I see then the hydrogen storage as a more viable solution, but of course it has limits. If we really have a Dunkelflaute over 2 weeks, then yeah, also the storage also has again its limitations. Well, also on one hand side on cost size, obviously, but also on regulation size. If you get too big on one side, you will have to follow very stringent rules, safety rules, and yeah, we will probably have to stay under a certain threshold. So as an external solution will be required, most likely.
Do you think any projects, not necessarily just this project, will be allowed to operate as kind of hybrid green-grey projects? So when you have this dark time at short or longer periods, they sell non-certified hydrogen.
Yes, basically the EU regulation, the Renewable Energy Directive, allows for this. But it's then afterwards the funding mechanisms that take away this possibility very often. So if it's a non-subsidized project, I can see this very much happening indeed, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we move on to our next presenter, which is Patrick Witte from GPSS.
Yeah, hi, I'm Patrick Witte. I'm founder and general manager of GPSS, Luxembourgish company. And today we are talking about, well, I want to talk about sustainable communities with local energy production and storage. First of all, GPSS is a very small and young company, like I said, from Luxembourg. And from the beginning, we are working on a challenge to generate green energy locally and making it usable. Maybe, what does that mean? It's mainly about, first of all, we need additional local energy production. In Luxembourg, we are stuck with wind power and photovoltaics. Wind power is very unflexible, both in terms of which sites are usable for wind power and especially regarding the timeline. A wind project takes at least 5 years to develop. So we need to utilize PV, solar energy, but Luxembourg is a very small country and surface is valuable and rare. We can't compete with housing, we can't compete with environmental protection, so we are in the area of farming. And that's our first solution. So our first main topic from our company is agri-PV, the combination of farming with PV electricity production. So that's the electricity production. And on the other hand, we have something which we need in order to make the electricity usable. Mainly because of the volatility of the energy production, but also because there are some sectors, as Professor Ladewig explained, that can't be electrified, so we need some other solution for this, which is green hydrogen, and also the topic why I'm standing here. But first of all, I want to give a brief overview about agri-PV, and to explain what is agri-PV, I will start by explaining what is not agri-PV, and it's something like this. So a solar plant is not necessarily agri-PV if it's on arable land or grassland. Even if there are some wildflowers or measures in order to integrate insects, or if you have sheep grazing underneath the modules, that's not agri-PV. Why? Because it's not designed for agriculture. It's designed to be a solar plant, and then in the second step, it's designed to integrate as much agriculture or biodiversity as possible, but it's not the core of the concept. So what we do at GPSS, maybe the next slide, is that first of all we take into our consideration what is the agricultural aspect of the site, what is needed by the farmer. And then we develop a technical concept around that. What is the machinery which is used? What are the distances which are needed in order to do so, to be efficient, to produce something which is valuable for the farmer? And this leads to concepts like this, shown here. I can't go into a deeper explanation of them, but as you can see, those plants, at the first glance, they look different because they are special. And they are special because they are adapted to something and not built as a conventional solar plant, which is meant to produce electricity as cheap as possible, and then to integrate agriculture afterwards. Next slide. It's the question about sustainability. Green electricity, per definition, is sustainable. But plants to produce green electricity, maybe not. Especially solar plants, there are big discussions in countries like Germany, where there are a lot of big solar plants, about why do we, well, mostly it comes back to not in my backyard. People don't want them. Not because they don't want green electricity, but because they don't like them, because they think they look ugly, because they think it's a problem for the environment, it's a problem for farming, stuff like this. So first of all, you need to integrate a project like this into the local community. For agri-PV, those are two communities. One is the community of the farmers, because they have power. They are owner of the land, or at least have influence on the land, and they need to be in the boat. They need to be part of an agri-PV plant, part of the design of an agri-PV plant, in order to accept it and to really drive the project forward, because they are getting something out of it. And on the other hand, the residents, which for a conventional solar park often have problems like it looks ugly, what's my benefit from this plant in my village? They can be very easily taken or made part of the project by just information and participation, which can be in the area from just invite people to a park, to a solar park, and explain why stuff is done like it is. And from this, two things like participation in form of financial participation in a project, which may be a very small part of the financial aspect of the project, but enough to give people or the local community the feeling of, I'm getting something out of this. And on the other hand, you need to integrate stuff which benefits biodiversity. Why? In Luxembourg, especially because you need to get the permits. But on the other hand, it's also because farming always has a lot of conflict with biodiversity. And if there's a possibility for a project to combine green electricity, farming, and something for the environment in form of biodiversity measures, that's an opportunity you should take, and an opportunity which can be taken because the farmer is already open to do something new because he's part of a bigger project. Next slide, please. And just to show you, we're not just talking about agri-PV, we are actually right now building or right now finishing the first agri-PV plant in Luxembourg, which looks something like this, and will be used to produce hay and food for cows in the future, as it was used already in the years before. And on the other hand, we have the topic of green hydrogen production. We already talked about hydrogen and green hydrogen, but I have two main challenges regarding green hydrogen, which I want to emphasize, which is, on the first hand, you need to get it really green to get it sustainable. Because if we are using any energy which is stored in fossils to transform them to energy, to electricity, to transform them to hydrogen again, that's not sustainable at all. So you really need to stick to green hydrogen if we're talking about hydrogen. Maybe for some transition time, there will be a need to produce also gray hydrogen in order to keep the customers alive if they need hydrogen. But in the end, to get it really sustainable, we need to get 100% green hydrogen. And on the other hand, it needs to be really affordable. Because if it's not affordable, there's no incentive to produce it or to use it. And then, once again, we will rely on heavy subsidies, and relying on subsidies is not sustainable. So those are two challenges which may sound like they are in direct conflict to each other. If it's green, it's not cheap. But for hydrogen, especially in a country like Luxembourg, we have a big opportunity, which is real local production and usage of the hydrogen. And by local, I really mean an energy source like agri-PV, because it can be implemented anywhere where there's farming land, directly coupled to hydrogen production, and best case directly coupled to the off-taker of hydrogen, which may be a refueling station or maybe an industry customer. If you do it like this, we have guaranteed 100% green hydrogen, because there is not even the possibility to use fossils, because the energy for the hydrogen production is not taken from the grid, it's taken directly from the source. And on the other hand, we avoid two of the main cost drivers. We already had a presentation explaining that 70% of the OPEX cost are for the electricity and of the electricity price. If we are using the public grid, we have around a third of the cost which are related to grid charges. If we do it locally, if you avoid the public grid, no grid charges. So there's additional money saved. And if you have the chance and you have a customer right there, then you have the other part of the OPEX cost, which is also one of the biggest parts, is the need for compression for transportation. A lot of energy, a lot of infrastructure needed, and very complex. And if you have an off-taker which can use hydrogen directly where it's produced, without the need for compression or transportation, then once again, there's big money which can be saved on this. So really local production with a flexible energy source like agri-PV, with local production, which needs to be very highly, which is very complicated. We already had a presentation explaining why it's even complicated to take energy from the grid if it's volatile. If you imagine you take energy from your energy source, it's even more volatile. So there's a very big challenge for forecasting, for power management, everything. But if you want a setup like this, which saves you money and guarantees sustainability, those are challenges which need to be tackled. Yeah, that was everything from my side. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Patrick. If anybody has any question or comment for Patrick? If not at the moment, don't worry, because we will have time at the end of the session. Sure, so we will move on to our next speakers. We have a joint presentation by our partner Liz, who has kindly organized this wonderful conference. So please, I will give the floor to Pierre Ribond and Jean-Sébastien Sauté.
I'll make some space so you can sit up here as well.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Here or here? Thank you.
So, hello everybody. It is the end of the session and the last talk before the closing drink. So, and you have two guys coming from an RTO, Research and Technology Organization, that are talking about digital twin to researchers in software engineering. So it's a little strange, but what is digital twin? Why? Why are we talking about digital twin? Is it really important? Is a digital twin not only the buzzword that you need to write to insert in your proposal in order to be funded by the European Commission? Well, we'll try to convince you that no, it can also be useful to take a good decision. So what is a digital twin? So if by definition, digital twin, it is simple. It is a a digital representation of a system, so a tangible system, something real, physical. Professor Andreas Wortmann from University of Stuttgart usually present it very simply. So let's take a car. Oh no, it's easy slide. Let's take a car, a real concrete car. And if you take all the part of the car and how these elements are linked together with their technical description, how they run, how they function, you get a model of the car, a digital model. In a way, we all get this model when we buy a new car. It is a technical documentation of the car. So everything is okay, it runs well. We are happy because when we open the door and sit in, it smells good, so it's fine. But then you use the car, you drive with it, and the sensor in the car sends back the data to the computer system of the car. And in fact, they do it to update this initial model. They enhance it with new information, and the model try to stick to the reality during the life cycle of the car. And Andreas Wortmann calls this updated model a digital shadow. But imagine, and when you get to the garage, the mechanic lifts up the hood, plug in his device to check the real state of the engine, for example, and he gets this updated model, this digital shadow, and he can take some decision if something is wrong. He corrects it manually. That it is a manual correction. So, but imagine that you are a champion, that you are driving Formula One. The sensors are more sophisticated, and they can get some. They get the information, and they can also take some decision and do some action to correct immediately, automatically, to fix the problem. So there are sensor and also actuator. It is automated. So then, if you have this feedback loop to interact with the system, we call it a digital twin. So it is Andreas Wortmann proposition, but actually we don't really care. It is this difference between a model, a shadow, and a twin. It's terminology. It's about terminology, and it's for academic people. The important thing to find themselves, and the important thing is to remember is that a twin is a digital representation of a system, and the main challenge is to keep it close to the reality in order to test, to question, to simulate action at the digital level before taking any action at the physical system itself. So a digital twin is used to take good decision. Okay, next slide, please. No, for a car, it seems easy because it's well documented. We know how it has been conceived, how it's running, and the scope of the car of the system is clearly limited. A car is a car, an engine is an engine, an industrial system is an industrial system. But when your system is not so precisely defined, like a city, for instance, where does a city start? Where does it end? A city is at the intersections of multiple domains. There is problem of energy, of transport, of climate, and etc. In a city, there are citizens, or there are humans in the loop, and we don't know the design model for each part of the city, of the overall city. It's too complex, too blur. We can't be exhaustive. So we can only have a description of different elements, and no one can precisely describe how they interact together. It's not complete, even if you go deep in the modeling. There is some uncertainty which remains. So for LuxHyVal, at first sight, we are in a closed world. An hydrogen plant is an industrial asset. It's a fact. But if we look closer, LuxHyVal, as Bradley said, is not only dealing with how a plant is running. It studies the global value chain, of hydrogen production. So we don't consider only one domain, hydrogen production, but it's also about green energy, climate, transport, and so on. And there are humans in the loop. So, and as it is innovative, we don't know everything from the beginning, and we will discover how it is running during its exploitation. So LuxHyVal case is neither a closed world and not entirely an open world. It's a kind of hybrid case. So how to address it? How to build a digital twin of such a system? By staying humble and keeping in mind that we don't know everything. It's that we will gather the different pieces step by step. And as we are IT people, for us, it's easier to represent those elements and to connect them through models. So we will consider different types of models. Design of or blueprints models, dynamic models, like scientific models, equation, function, how it runs, in fact. Probabilistic model with AI machine learning models, and even human models that represent the knowledge of the business expert. So we will first collect all of this model, and we will try to link their different elements together, and we get a sort of big inclusive model, a graph, that is the best snapshot of the system that we can draw at the beginning of this life cycle. And then what we try to do is to collect the maximum of information, digital information, the data that are coming from the sensor, machine learning result coming from big data analysis, but also human knowledge coming from business experts that can enhance the graph, correct it when it's not good, add some rules and so on. So we will do it in order to get closer and closer to the physical system itself. So, and we will try during the life cycle, so there is a line of time at the bottom, to stick to it. And after a certain time, we hope that this graph is close enough to the real system to be questioned, to ask questions to this graph. We will be able to test different hypotheses, to run simulation, and to make prediction. So it is what a digital twin is made for. It is a tool for decision makers. And Jean-Sébastien will dig a little more into this graph to present it.
Yes. Next slide, please. Thank you. Here the question is mainly what we put inside the models. Pierre tried to explain the different natures of models, and the thing is we need to follow a proper approach. So we were strongly inspired here by let's say, model-driven architecture approach, which is a classical way of designing systems, let's say critical safety systems. The thing is, we also have to think that LuxHyVal is not only about critical systems or formal approach of this, it's also about modeling value chain, business value, evolving regulations. So this first step, let's say with a higher layer about requirements, it's really collecting all of those, including end user requirements, because we need to put them also in the loop. So we have different kind of models, we have different nature of models as Pierre says, and then we try to refine them through these different layers into executable models on which we are able to question them, as Pierre says, about to do forecasting as we had in mind, before the system is put in production, up to a certain level of specification where we are in kind of pre-production system, on which we say, okay, now we are in development phases and we connect it to the real system through sensors and actuators. Next slide, please. So we promote, let's say, an approach which starts for, let's say, classical the requirement stuff, which is the higher level modeling part. Then from these, we design the first level of models
which are mainly executable models, so the models that Pierre mentions, with equations, with functions. So it can be starting by this small example. So where I can, I don't know, forecast the production and the consumptions and having some hypothesis on the way it works. So at this point, when we reach the step 3, when we can execute this system, we have a kind of virtual twin. It's not really, the system is not put already in production. We are not sure that it's feasible. And we want to iterate on this virtual twin to make errors, to forecast problems or opportunities, new business opportunities. We want to test and assess scenario before the system is put in production. And this is the interest of this approach. Then, once we've reached a state, it's going in production. We can go to the next slide, please. We enter in the living system, and this is what Pierre mentioned about this alignment phase between the models, which are the ideal situation, and the real situation. And this is where we have to correct the models themselves, where we have to update, and where the, let's say, the uncertain part of the system are coming into play. So we may have forget one important regulation, I hope not, but sometimes it happens, or we may have forget some critical end users, and they complain about this. So yes, we should be focused on that. And we reached a state where we expect that this alignment between the models and the system already prepare the digital twin and the design of the system in the same time. So we can exploit, when we are in exploitation phases, either the digital twin and the system, relying on the design models that we had on the system. So we know all the design rationale, or everything that we've put in mind, and not only, as Pierre said, it's not only data-driven stuff, where information comes from the system itself and we discover things. It's here we have also design things, which is important. And when we reach a stable state, next slide please, we can export it. So we can have first implementation at the Luxembourg side, but the idea is to transfer it to other countries, the Czech Republic and Ukraine and all over Europe and also in Australia. The idea is to identify what are the commonalities, so the things that we can transfer, and the differences where we need to adapt the models that we've put. But we already have the models, so we already have a design, and we already have a rationale to deal with that. And because it's not a straightforward thing, it's requiring different extension of the system itself. So as Pierre said, first we may consider only the production of hydrogen with maybe some source of energy, but then we can open to different markets, to different exploitation, to different potentialities. So we extend it progressively, and the idea is to refine and keeping the trace of all the rationales, so all the models that we've put into the place, and then export it. And the last slide is also to talk about sustainability of the digital twin itself, because we can ask these questions. And software is also really, could be also done at higher cost, as we know, with large language models and a lot of AI stuff. And what we promote here is first the reusability of the components. So the models are reusable in a different context. We do not have to retrain them. We may extend or transfer some learning parts if we have AI stuff inside, but not keeping everything and not redesigning and not re-executing everything. The second thing is we would like to focus more on analytical model than AI models. I mean that we want to also have some explanation on why the system is behaving like that, instead of having a black box that is, okay, I trained that from this data and it's behaving like this. And there are also AI approaches that are more dealing about rule extraction instead of learning from data. And this is what we want to also to put forward in this approach. And finally, the last point is also when we are being production, we need also that IoT sensors that are deployed are only the required one, because we have a lot also of energy which are potentially consumed by this. Also, it's electronic device that we put everywhere, and at the end, they are not sustainable themselves. And as Pierre said, also thank you for LuxHyVal to welcome us in this project, because we are a bit aside from the technical side.
Thank you to all the speakers. Does anybody have any question or comment or remark that they would like to do? Yes.
Thank you to both of the speakers from LIST. I wanted to add a short comment on synergy and about a physical, real hydrogen production facility and the digital twin, and why this is a synergy. Because you cannot build a digital twin unless you have the physical object that you are modeling. And I am so excited and proud to be a small part of this story because process engineers have made digital models of process equipment since a long time, and that's very well understood. But this system, this digital twin, is so much more rich and complex because it involves decision making, it involves business processes, it involves regulation, it involves the end users and their practices. So this is very complex. I'm very pleased that very smart people are working on it. They're going to invest a lot of time over several years to get this to work. But they benefit from the physical things that are being made in LuxHyVal, but we benefit from the digital twin, we being the people making the physical stuff, because it is an incredible outreach and communication tool. It's a digital interface, not just to the users within the consortium, to the whole world. This will be a public, outwardly facing digital twin. Anyone can interact with it and see it. But it is this replication tool. And I'm so proud that we have the participants from Czech Republic and the Ukraine in our project. And this will be so useful and so valuable for them to take a fully developed and validated digital twin and use it as a design tool and use it as a feasibility testing tool for hydrogen in their countries. So the Czech Republic is doing quite well, the Ukraine not so well at the moment. There's going to be a lot of reconstruction necessary there. So I'm super excited as coordinator of this project to have the experts making a digital twin. It brings a lot of value to our consortium, and with the topic of today's workshop, hydrogen synergy, it's exactly an example of synergy between a real physical system and end users and a digital twin. And there's win-win on both sides. Yeah. If I have chance for another question, it's for Patrick. Patrick, come on up, because I just ask questions non-stop. You didn't mention valorization of oxygen, but I think that you just didn't mention it. So is there a possibility to valorize oxygen, and is it more relevant in the kind of applications you're talking about because you're dealing with agricultural producers as one potential user?
Yeah, very good question, to be honest, because oxygen is most of the time left out of the picture. Mostly because it's a very difficult business case. If you have to store oxygen, forget it. Only way to really make it efficiently work is if you have something on site which uses oxygen. In the context of farming, it could be something like a greenhouse. If you have a greenhouse, there are different techniques inside of greenhouses, but there are some like a floating greenhouse, if you want to call it like this. That's something where you can use oxygen. Or if you have something like a what is the right word for it? Yeah. Wastewater treatment, exactly. That's something where you already need a lot of oxygen, and where you can really benefit if there's oxygen on site available. So you always have to have like open eyes to look for use cases with oxygen. If there are use cases on site, perfect. But to be honest, if you don't have them on site, don't waste time to develop them, because it's a very thin business case with oxygen. But it's possible, and it shouldn't be left off the picture.
Yeah, Patrick, during your presentation, you were talking about a point very interesting. We have the same problem in France and I think in other countries. Installation when you go to install, I think it was the panels. By the way, today it's a bad day for solar energy. But which solution did you find? So with I think it was in Germany, you were talking about the farmers and the fact that they were against, but basically you managed to convince them. How did it work? How did you manage to get a solution?
So you're talking about how to convince farmers and the public. So I think especially for farmers, the big difference is the way we approach agri-PV or PV installation. Like I said, our approach is centered around the agricultural use of the surface. So we're not going to Our approach is not to talk to a farmer and explain him what will be his problems and how much money he will get in order to compensate for it. And the strategy is to go to a farmer to understand what he's doing on site, to develop a concept which supports, in best case, or at least has the least possible negative influence. And so to make it really bearable for the farmer, so to make it really an option. Not it's bad and you're getting money for it, and how much money do you need in order to accept it? Because if you do it like this, like I said, there's a community around it, so maybe you satisfy one farmer with money, and all of the other farmers around and all of the people living around there, all of them will notice, okay, so there's one person benefiting financially from it, and that's it. If it's something which makes sense because there is a concept behind it which integrates farming, biodiversity, and electricity production, and the farmer gets something out of it, and like I said, best case, also the community around him gets something out of it, that's how you convince people, in my opinion.
Thank you. So my question was about the business model that you're developing for this concept. I had a chance to follow the project at the very beginning, at least, and now I'm a bit disconnected to it. And I live in Lospelt, by the way, so I think that's literally walking distance from where you want to install the panels. So just to get back to the question now, I suppose you have to financially support the farmers for them to accept somehow to get the panels installed. So what is the business model? How do you think you will make money with the company? Like, is it renting the panels? Is it like sharing the revenue from the electricity? Do you want to run the station maybe? I know that there is a project for one station, filling buses and that type of stuff. So what do you have in mind so far?
Yeah, so there's a whole range of possible business cases, which are really positioned from very easy to very complicated. Very easy is the electricity production from agri-PV. So the main income is from selling the electricity, especially for agri-PV. What we have here and what we are building right now is a plant which was part of a national agri-PV tender. So there's a guaranteed price for the electricity from the Ministry of Economy. So we're selling electricity to local energy provider and getting at the price which is the price for electricity at the apex spot market, and the difference is paid by the ministry. So that's the main income. For the farmer, we are really taking care not to disturb prices for farming land, because already a good example is Germany or France. Normally, as a farmer, you pay something around like 200 euros per hectare in order to farm there. If if a solar developer comes there and builds a conventional solar plant, they are paying around 3,000 euros per hectare. So, and that's like, at a landowner, you have no choice. And it's a conflict with farming, because farmers have no way to, even if they have good arguments why they should keep on farming there, financially they have no chance. And for agri-PV, we don't want this approach how much money do we need in order to accept it, and then we can build it. We need to approach, okay, this is a reasonable amount of money, which is benefiting the farmer for the additional inconvenience he has, because even though he's keeping up the farming, there will be inconvenience for him, because additional steps, maybe additional machinery or small changes to the machinery, he needs to be more careful, stuff like this. Small inconvenience, so just a small compensation for this, which is more than conventional agriculture, but not if he's just the farmer and not involved in the project. It's not like he shouldn't be part of the project because he wants the money. It's because he sees the benefits and also gets additional income out of it, which is in relation to the additional amount of work he has to put into it, to make the amount of inconvenience. But also the possibility for the farmer to be part of the project. So business case, right now we are involved in 4 agri-PV plants, which are in the project development up to the realization stage. Those plants range from, we are investing in the agri-PV plant, and the farmer is part of the project, but it's just part of the project because he is the owner of the land and he keeps the agriculture, and will probably have a small share in the plant. But we also have a project, which is my favorite one, to be honest, where we are more or less doing 50-50 with the farmers who own the land and who will be farming the land. They invest 50% of the investment, and we do 50%. We take care of the technical and the regulation aspects. They take care of the agricultural aspects, and we work together, and we both get the most out of it. And both sides are really motivated to do so. And we have projects where they are farmers, they own the land, they want the agri-PV plant, and we are only providing a service by developing the plant for them. And but if the plant is built, we hand over the keys to them, and it's part of their agricultural business. So that's for agri-PV. And but I think the most important part is to involve farmers more than they are involved right now in most agri-PV plants. So the model which I explained, which is more or less like 50-50, in my opinion, best approach.
Also to expand quickly, to have the projects.
Exactly.
They will also be the drivers.
Yeah, exactly. So it is, funny enough, this project is by far the project which works the best in the development stage. And there's a reason for it.
You're a very popular speaker, Patrick, so I will just keep going. I've heard of 2 examples with a lot of community involvement in energy projects. So one was very recently opened in the north of the country, a new wind park, couple of wind turbines, and more than 300 local members of the community own some share in the enterprise. And the second example I have is from a company in the UK, Octopus Energy, a big, very dynamic and innovative company. And for some of their projects with wind turbines, which attract a lot of community interest, they offer very, very interesting dynamic pricing to the local users of electricity. So for these communities that give their consent to have a wind turbine, they receive free or heavily discounted electricity when the turbine is spinning. So, I mean, they're both radically different but deeply engaged business models with the local community. So, you know, I mean, one of them clearly works here in Luxembourg, this recent one with the wind parks. Do you see something like that for the future of your business? Your business is a bit constrained because it's on one piece of land, belongs to one family, I guess. But do you see this as a future model that we should adopt?
Yeah, once again, very interesting topic. To be honest, I think all of the financial involvement of the public for renewable energy projects, it comes from the wrong reasons. That's something which developed during the times when there was a heavy opposition, especially for wind parks, and then it was a tool to give something back to community. but with a small taste of, okay, you're getting money, so please be aligned. Which is maybe not the right reason for it to do it, but there are better reasons. And it is a very interesting business case, because as a developer, you can develop a project, then give something back to the community and get additional funds for the next project. So it is something which should, to be honest, it should be always part of a plant which is installed by a foreigner, like a development company. If it is, I don't know if it's something, especially if you talk about agri-PV, and there's a farmer who's building an agri-PV plant on his own land to get additional income for his farm, for his agricultural business. I don't know if it should be necessary for him to open it up to the public. So maybe that's the difference, once again, new difference for agri-PV. So if it's agri-PV as part of the agricultural business, I don't know, if a farmer buys a new tractor, there's no one from the village comes over and says, oh, can I have a share in your tractor? But if it's something which is developed, especially if it's developed really on a broader scale and has an impact, visual impact or other impacts, I think it's a very good opportunity, because in the end, it's not like it's additional cost for the project. It's just a way to give the community the possibility to participate in it. And I think if that's something which is needed to keep a positive momentum for renewable energies, then it's something which is totally in every way acceptable and should be promoted to a certain degree. And sorry, regarding the octopus energy way of doing it, it's very smart, but very complicated. If you are big enough and have a model which works like this, I think it's a very good method, because it's also an incentive for people to adapt their energy consumption to a renewable energy production. Great, but it's very complicated to do so.
Oh, we have to finish.
Just the last question to Pierre and his colleague. Just maybe. No, don't worry. It's just to all presentations I saw were really great. Congratulations to everybody. I'm not a specialist, but I'm interested in these subjects. I saw in your presentation you were talking at the last slides, I think, about exportation with Czech Republic and Ukraine. Just to understand, are you in a partnership, international partnership, you cooperate with some actors there, or you're definitely doing like business exportation with them? And what are you exporting exactly, the models?
I'm the coordinator of the project, so I'm perhaps better placed to answer the question. So Luxembourg Hydrogen Valley, very quick snapshot, is a piece of infrastructure that will be developed and built here in Luxembourg, but we have 2 replication partners. So the idea is to copy, but not to directly copy, but to learn from all of the experience that we obtain and the problems we solve and the challenges we encounter to much more rapidly build another hydrogen valley in the Czech Republic and another hydrogen valley in the Ukraine. Of course, we started this process when the war started in Ukraine, the illegal invasion by Russia. And since then, the European Commission, the European Investment Bank, and other international actors have already started to plan the reconstruction of the Ukraine. That's a very positive thing. Of course, we need to end the war, but they're planning for the financial, energy, investment, education, reconstruction of Ukraine. And that's a marvelous thing, right? Because they are at the moment are having infrastructure blown up that mostly dates from the Soviet times. And they want to replace it with world-class, brand new infrastructure. And that's a fantastic thing. Part of that infrastructure will be energy infrastructure, and a subsection of that will be hydrogen. people don't know it, they already have massive hydrogen production using very old alkali electrolyzers in the Ukraine. They actually have enormous, vast renewable installations in the Ukraine. So they have all the ingredients. They have an enormous heavy industry base that needs to decarbonize. They have a lot of renewables. So the conditions are there. We just need to stop the war. But we will work very, very hard to support them as best as we can. And the original plan was that the digital twin would be developed and it would be kind of like a very sophisticated design tool, because you can think of it like a simulation of a hydrogen valley that you can reconfigure. Change the scale, change the topology, change the end users, change the timing of things. But possibly the actions there will come much faster than the delivery of the validated digital twin in our project. But at whatever rate that we do our work and whatever way, we will work hard to support the colleagues in the Ukraine to realise their ambitions with green hydrogen and to play our part in rebuilding their country.
Thank you. We have like 5 minutes left, so if anybody has any more questions, we can maybe address 1 or 2 questions maximum. No, in the chat, nobody has asked anything. Okay, great. So thank you all very much for your participation. I know this time is especially hard to gather some audience being the last part of the conference, so it's really appreciated. I invite you all to follow the progress of the LuxHyVal project. We are in the starting point. It's a 5-year project, so there is a long way to go. You can follow us on our website, LuxHyVal, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We just have the general objectives established for the project yet, but as soon as we are getting results, we will be also sharing those with the audience. Thank you very much.